We're back.
Back
Hello,
for round
everybody.
2.
Yep, doubleheader today. So you're going to be hearing this a week apart. But Jason and I recorded it today because we got time. So we got time, and we have found keeping pre-recorded podcasts in the pipe to be very helpful because we lead busy
Things
lives.
happen.
Yeah.
People get sick.
One thing I wanted to touch on that you had just mentioned, because I felt like in the last hour, I got to do a lot of talking about how great technology is, but you mentioned something that's a very serious problem that I can't account for, that technology can't account for, which is that it does screens, automation, these things do remove you from your work. And that has obviously been negative. The example, in agreeing with you, the example I brought up was that while the washing machine has obviously saved hours and hours and hundreds of hours of time, thousands of hours of time, it and inventions like it in the 50s and 60s,
The time-saving inventions.
the time-saving inventions that increased efficiency, led to idle women who then became members of the second and third wave of feminism, which has been an obvious net drag on society. So,
Which you probably agree with if you're still listening to this podcast.
right, yeah.
If you want to debate it, text us.
Yeah.
Go ahead and email us.
Hyperpremium@protonmail.com or hyperpremiummag on Instagram. Let us know. So technology can't account for those things, right? There's even in the idea of increasing efficiency, idle hands, the devil's playthings. These are things that technology can't account for, and things that we have to address, because we're seeing what happened to women in the 50s and 60s is happening to society writ large right now, because technology's gotten so efficient that many people have daycare email jobs that aren't even real, just infinitely expandable bureaucratic marketing positions and HR roles, and they are feeling quite meaningless in their lives, and they're becoming addicted to gambling and drugs and becoming quite nihilistic. This is everywhere. It's a huge problem. So that is an issue that technology cannot account for. I'm bringing it up because I don't have an answer, and it's talk about broadening your horizons. It's an issue that I never put much thought into before Jason and I started talking, and
So we talk about time saving
right,
as if it's the gold standard of what we should always shoot for.
right.
Is it? And
No,
why?
yeah,
Why?
I don't think so.
So why is it? I
would
think. Sorry, go ahead.
No,
I'm
I
asking.
would
I will
would
ask.
say,
why is time saving so important to us?
I would say time saving and efficiency in general is important because freeing up. One of the things people get worried about with AI is that it's going to destroy all these jobs, but they're thinking about it backwards. It's not destroying jobs. It's freeing up man hours. It's freeing up labor hours to be allocated in other places. So time saving increases efficiency, or is a sign of increased efficiency. And increased efficiency is deflationary, so it makes things cheaper, and it makes things more accessible. But that in and of itself is not the goal, right?
Being able to afford more things because they're made cheaper.
Right.
Does that bring joy?
Right. Does that bring joy? No.
Is that what God wants for us? Is to just have as much stuff for as little effort as possible?
Exactly. No. And we just, so the topic that we're gonna stay on the broadening horizons topic. The angle we're gonna take today is stories. How reading good books, reading good stories, interacting with good stories can really expand your experience of the world. And Jason brought a book out that was, what's the book called?
It's called Island Boy.
No, the other one.
I'm sorry. Which one?
The Little Farm.
Oh, The Little Farm by the Sea?
I think that's the one. Yeah, that's the one you just showed me. Yeah.
The one you were just looking at.
Yes. So in these illustrations, you can see at some point I saw a power converter, or the thing on the street where that's comes up out of the ground so that you can do maintenance on power lines and stuff. Transformer. Yes.
No, I think Transformer's the big.
Oh, that one right there. See, in front of the truck.
Oh,
yeah.
Ethan picked out something I've never even seen in this book on his first glance through.
And so
that's funny.
But then they also talk about the greenhouse, and the greenhouse is made of plastic, and they use little plastic cups to bud the seeds.
Yep.
And
that's technology.
That's all modern technology, but it's modern technology deployed in an environment where the family is using their hands to grow and work with things.
Every single picture in here is multiple family members working together to hand pick or hand tend. There are tractors, there's like antique tractors in it, but most of this is depicting a lot of handwork.
Right. And they're using a lot of metal tins and stuff. Now, metal tins are much cheaper today because you can produce them easier. Obviously, plastic is modern. Electricity is increasing. Electrical efficiency makes power cheaper, which makes it easier to do things you can afford to, automate certain things that you don't care about. Everybody will have things that they want to automate, things they don't want to automate, and you get to pick and choose what you do and don't want to automate. You have a broader series of choices because electricity is cheaper. But the point that I'm trying to make is that efficiency has to still aim at a human purpose. You can't be Chinese in your dedication to efficiency, where it's just
that is your God.
Yeah, it is your God. And it's just like all I care about.
The only metric that you look at is time saved.
Right. Or trying to be able to create widgets for cheaper. That it has to serve a human purpose. And a human
it would be more efficient to artificially inseminate women.
Right.
Instead of going through all the time and romance of sexual intimacy.
Right.
That would be far more efficient for making babies, Right. So is that what we should do because it's more efficient?
Exactly. No, because it is.
It takes away from human flourishing.
Right.
It takes away from God's plan. That's efficiency gone rogue.
Right. And it has destroyed. It has destroyed a key aspect of the human experience to do it that way.
Right. So, something we touched about in the break.
Yeah.
Was the dishwashing hours saved? What was it? 12 years or something?
I think it's 10 years total
saved over the lifespan of a housewife.
The domestic career of a housewife.
Career of a housewife by using the dishwasher. Yes, it's cheap. Yes, it's handy. Yes, it saves you time. But is that time that should be eliminated? Is that time being freed up to do something that is more meaningful than hand washing dishes?
Right.
And that may seem, I bet most of the people listening to this are probably like, I've never thought of that before.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a very good question. I would say the answer is yes. Jason may have probably almost definitely has a different answer. But what I would say the caveat to my answer is, you should save that time, but you ought not be irresponsible with the time you've saved. You need to use time and manage it at the same way you manage every other resource. If you have more money, you ought not go be frivolous with that money. You ought not throw it at a stripper or use it to buy drugs or whatever. You should invest it properly, make sure it's going to be there for future generations to use as they need it. You need to be responsible with it. And that's what time is. Time is a resource. And as efficiency increases and we get more time and more resources, we have to manage them correctly. And so that is something that technology, in a way, technology is threatening. It is dangerous, and it ought to be monitored and managed responsibly. So that's one caveat that I felt like I don't know, had the final say in our last hour. So I wanted to.
I wasn't prepared.
Yeah.
I had a breather. I'm ready to fight back now. To get back to use the dishwashing as a specific example, because it may be kind of abstract for people who have never thought about it at all.
Yeah.
Here's an example of how dishwashing is a beneficial thing and not a drudgery work kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you have children or a spouse, that is opportunity for co-working together.
Yeah.
It ought not to be, I think, the wife of a mother, the work of a mother of 5 able-bodied children who are all playing video games while she hand washes the dishes just because.
Right.
because that's her job and nobody else should do it. I'm of the opinion that that is something that your children, especially your daughters who you're training up to be good wives and mothers one day, they are serving by doing that. That is how they work and glorify God, is by serving and giving of themselves in this, in the same way that a husband serves and gives of himself by going and doing whatever work God has given him to do.
Yeah.
Even if it's uncomfortable.
Right.
So just because dishwashing can be drudgery sometimes does not mean that we should eliminate it.
Yeah.
Necessarily. It can be a training ground for children. It can give them a sense of value because they are contributing to the family economy. They are participating. They are not observers and consumers. We don't want to raise consumers. We want to raise able-bodied, capable, intelligent, thoughtful, servant-hearted children to behave that way with their own families. And one way you can do that is chores. And we're trying to, my wife and I are struggling through this about how to get the kids not complain about chores.
Yeah.
And Emily just talked to another lady at church who has grown daughters who are very lovely, ladylike, like the kind of daughter that if you were their age, like you'd want to marry them and have them a housewife.
Right.
Or you'd want, if you're older, you'd want your sons to have ladies like that around.
Right.
You're like, please, I hope somebody's raising daughters like that when my son is that old so that he can marry one.
Yeah.
Like, you did a good job. So Emily was asking her last night, like, how did you do it?
Yeah.
Because we're struggling.
Yeah.
How do you make them ladylike and lovely and a joy to be around and not chafe at the thought of work? And so she was getting tips about that, about potentially making it more of a game when they're very young and whatnot.
Yeah.
But they also, kids love to be needed.
Yeah.
They really desire to be needed and to spend any kind of time with their parent. Our eldest especially loves to cook and bake and things like that. And so that's a good training ground for my wife to allow her to cook and bake things. Is that the most efficient thing? To have the 8-year-old be cooking dinner? No.
Right.
It makes more of a mess. Sometimes there's an ingredient forgotten, so the pancakes are hard, or they didn't rise very well. Whatever.
Yeah.
They're not as fluffy. But she's learning.
Right.
And that's the important thing. Like we're not about most efficient here. We're about training somebody's never efficient.
Right.
If you've ever been a trainer at a work, you know how much time is lost.
Yeah.
That company is investing a lot of time and money into getting somebody up to speed.
Right.
It takes time. And so does training someone to be a good worker of any sort. So dishwashing can be a time of, if one person's washing and another person is drying, that's great couple time.
Yeah.
I got to know my wife a little bit at after a potluck dinner. I managed to go and wash dishes next to her, or like dry dishes along with her, and that was how we spent time a little bit. That was one of the early times when I got to spend time alongside of Emily, so I got physical proximity to her, bumping elbows occasionally over the sinks and serving alongside of her. So if you are serving with the girl or woman that you're interested in, that's a way. It's a way to get to know somebody.
Yeah.
It's a way to continue getting to know your wife, spending time washing the dishes in the evening.
Certainly.
You can talk. Your hands are the only thing busy. It's pretty mindless work.
Right.
Which is the best kind of work to be talking over.
Right.
Be doing something together. And you get a sense of, my wife and I love doing projects together. Not because we were always really good at it, because sometimes, especially on a building project, I would, be figuring it out, not knowing what I'm doing, and it's frustrating to have anybody else asking you what they should be doing. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing yet. But we love completing a project together. It is bonding to our relationship to do something together. And that can be accomplished in the same way doing something you need to do every day, which is wash dishes.
Right, right.
So that's my big pitch for getting rid of your dishwasher. Or just not using it on occasion. You
Right.
don't have to not have one. But
Right.
you're like, I don't know, Friday evenings is our like at-home date night where we wash dishes together after a little spaghetti dinner.
Right.
And it's a time of intimacy.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be physical intimacy, and it doesn't have to be just sitting there eating and talking to each other between mouthfuls. It can be a continued conversation, and it's a way that you show love to your wife by helping with her work.
Right. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
anyway, that's my big pitch for that. It's the same for, you could apply that same thinking to just about every household's labor-saving device, and we have a washing machine, so we're not... I bought hand washing stuff at a certain point. It's not been used except in power outages.
Yeah.
So it's really just a backup because
Yeah.
Emily was like, no, that's too far. And I can't get the, like, everything is so dirty that the kids have. I
Yeah.
can't spend the time. It's like, okay, I'm not going to push it.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah. Well, there you go. I think that's a good place to end the last episode's discussion on. Let's talk about
Moving to stories
moving to stories. So
and how that ties to both roots and broadening your horizons.
sure, yeah, we can do that. What's the sailing book? The
Oh, another book.
Island Boy.
Island
Okay.
Boy, Story and Pictures by Barbara Cooney. We've
So
talked about Barbara Cooney before. She's the one who did the pictures for Oxcart Man.
Yes, so that's one we've talked about in the past. Barbara Cooney, good writer, good illustrator.
Children's book, yeah. Children's picture book with a story.
Yes. So the Island Boy. This is a good example for what we're talking about here. So, reading stories. People will often talk about how travel can expand your mind and seeing how different people live, and it's so great. And seeing foreigners do whatever, and everybody can be caramel and queer and love each other, whatever. Like,
Caramel. Queer.
yes.
All right.
This is just New York liberal speak.
Oh, is it okay?
Yeah, well, I'm dogging on people thinking that travel is like this,
The penultimate.
penultimate human experience.
Right.
You can just
You should continue doing that indefinitely.
That's
the
just
ultimate.
spend your entire 20s in Europe, or whatever.
Yeah. It doesn't take
divorce
that
your
long to
husband.
figure out.
Brother. Oh my goodness, all right, so my wife and I met in Austin. We're both tech workers, very modern in our day-to-day lives and our experiences. Obviously not in our worldview, but we've got a lot of exposure to normies who are fried. And
What is a normie for our listeners who...
a normie is a normal person. The guy you see on Instagram who lives what you would consider the normal, straight up the middle American experience.
Okay. The pop culture?
Yeah,
Is that
9 to
fair
5, living in an apartment or in a subdivision.
Okay.
Totally removed from any spirituality or meaning beyond watching sports.
He's a cog.
Cog, straight up cog. So we've seen a lot of normies.
There's a new slang.
Yeah, new
He's a
slang.
cog.
An old slang for you, a bug man, straight up bug man.
A bug man?
Yeah, bug man. Just a little cockroach, just
Part of the colony?
just going around doing nothing. So bug people do, and one thing that bug women do is divorce their husbands and then like go to Peru. Like that's so many of Emily's friends at work. Obviously, like because God built people a certain way, no matter how hard you try, people are still going to divide themselves along group lines.
Yeah.
And so the guys are friends with the guys and the girls are friends with the girls. And so all of her friends are girls. And one of the things that was so common, okay, it happened like 5 times in a group of like maybe 20 workers.
Oh my goodness.
These girls,
Hi, that's a good idea.
yeah, they get together and they start like, dude, girls can really get in each other's heads. And so they get together and they like 3 of them all at the same time got a divorce from their husbands and went on a trip together to Peru. Just left.
Well, that's very sad.
Like that's so common. All right. So travel's not good. And that's not what we're talking. This is not expanding your horizons. Divorcing your husband is not expanding your
Well,
horizons.
that's not. I wouldn't say that travel is bad for... I wouldn't say that...
Well, you traveled.
I traveled.
You traveled
Yeah.
after high school.
So I think it is good within reason
Right.
for broadening your horizons.
Yeah.
My uncle and aunt were living over there at the time, and they said, hey, do you want to come over here after high school
Yeah.
if you don't have any plans? And I was like, nope, I don't have any plans.
Might as well. Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I went over there and lived in Eastern Europe for 6 months, and they were like, we don't want you to live with us. So that we found you a place.
Oh, okay.
So that I would have a more immersive experience.
Yes,
Not
yes,
just
okay.
be like, I'm living with Americans in a different area
Yes.
and I never interact with the locals.
Right.
So they're like, you're going to live off over here. You can only get to us by bus or taxi.
Okay.
Here's verbatim what you tell the taxi driver to get to our house.
Okay. Nice. There you go. Yeah. So travel, I think, can be useful. There's a balance in everything. Today we're out of balance. I think that travel's great. I would suggest that something that might be better than travel is reading. Reading good stories, taking in good stories. I think reading is more impactful than watching movies most of the time because, and the argument I'll make from this is that there's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So eye movement EMDR. Okay.
All right. EMDR.
So EMDR is a therapeutic technique used to reprocess either good or bad experiences, internalize them, incorporate your shadow, if you want to speak in a Jungian way, and undo damage that's been done to you. Okay. What happens is you move your eyes back and forth, or you stimulate the left and right side of your brain very quickly, and then you think about the memory, and it just magically fixes you. It's a very, very researched phenomenon, very effective, not a disputable. It's like saying that disagreeing that running will increase your cardiovascular. Okay. So that's how research to this is. EMDR, you're moving your eyes back and forth like you are when you read. So you're engaging with what I would say fiction is probably the best way to do this, because in fiction you're communicating broader ideas, broader things, deeper truths within the story, themes that are nested within the interactions of the plot and the characters interacting with each other. And so you're hypnotizing yourself with a story by moving your eyes back and forth along the lines. So you're hitting into like a hypnagogic state. Maybe it's like when I get in a really good habit of reading, like I'm reading consistently every day, I'll go away, dude. I'll forget that I'm reading, and Emily will be like, "Hey, what's going on?" I'll be like, "Oh my goodness, I'm not Frodo!" And so I would argue that reading is the best way to bring stories in. The example that I was going to use for how these things broaden your horizon is Island Boys. Jason just read me an excerpt from the book about a young boy whose father buys an island. And he brings his family out there after building some infrastructure. The family lives there for a long time. They establish a business. They build a boat, a large sailboat that they use to transport goods up and down the East Coast. And the boy that the book is about actually takes over.
The youngest son.
Yeah, he takes over the boat, but eventually he returns to the island. But here's the thing that broadened my horizon a little bit as Jason was reading me this excerpt from the book, is that people leave. All throughout the story, members of the family go off and leave the island behind. Mm-hmm. Now that got my noggin jogging about the fact that this modern American economy, which I love so much, love stock exchanges and finance and all this stuff. This modern American economy that I love so much incentivizes people to leave. Right? It does not, because there's so much of the American income comes from having a job, an employer, which is probably a pretty large corporation in most cases. I guess actually that's probably not true in most cases, but still there's bigger companies than existed previously. I'll say that.
True. Yeah. Larger concentrations of employees.
Right. So it's very common for you to go off and move to a city that you've never been to go work at a job that's full of, it's corporate and it's in its infrastructure. So it's not a person. It's not like there's a family that's thinking about you who knows you. It's corporate. So like by the time it goes up to the people that are actually running the company, they don't even know your name in many instances. Mm-hmm. And so you're very isolated. You're little, Doug Wilson calls them BBs. You're atomized, separated from things. You have no roots, like we talked about in the last episode. And the modern economy does incentivize people to leave, to go away from where they're from, to separate from roots, and then to go to a new place, and not because you're not married to your job, you're not married to what you're doing. It doesn't actually matter to you. You don't develop roots in the place that you lived before either. So you just, you go from, you leave for school, which is something people really didn't do very often before the modern era. You go to school in some town. I went to a town close to my home, but didn't build roots there. Then I moved from the town I went to college in to go to another town where I worked, and never established roots there.
Right.
Until I came home, and established roots here. And I did that totally removed from work. I made the conscious decision to limit the job opportunities I would have by coming out here. I knew in advance I was doing that. I was operating counter to what I was economically incentivized to do. And so it broadens my horizons in that I now see problems, right? So I just engaged with a story that got my noggin jogging, and I started thinking, oh, wow, this thing that I love so much does introduce these problems that need to be faced. Like, what do we do about the fact that people are heavily incentivized to just move around, to just chase these atomized, do-nothing, kind of worthless paychecks that are derived from work that's not that fulfilling, and you are engaged in...
They tell you it's fulfilling because it's more money and you'll be able to afford more of the iPhones.
The crap that you buy. Yeah, the crap.
All the stuff that the materialistic society tells you will be fulfilling.
Right. And so now in my head, there's this new problem that needs to be answered. And this, actually, I'm just looking at our battery life on this laptop here. We may be...
Ooh.
Short episode, guys.
You have a charger?
Nope.
Okay.
We'll make it short. We made our last episode long, so we'll justify making
we'll even
it
out.
Short. Yeah. When I get this laptop's about to die warning, I'll save it real quick and we'll call it.
Okay.
So that's how you... That is a way that a story broadened my horizons, is that I'm looking at this like issue in a new light because of this children's book, and you get other stories. I'm trying to think of a solid example, but honestly, you look like you're staring at me like you're thinking something. Are you thinking something? Am I wrong about that?
Oh, sort of, but not really. I was waiting for you to finish your thought before.
Okay.
I commented.
Yeah, my thought's finished. You can go ahead.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay. Well, then I'll...
So you were talking about how people are incentivized to go away, and it's a problem that needs to be fixed.
Right. And
because it destroys roots, that destroys communities.
Right.
And without communities, you have no support system.
Right.
You are, like Doug Wilson says, a BB, and
you're basically relying
jostling around
on
yourself.
Yeah,
on the government. Yeah, so it makes you dependent on the safety net, which is the government.
Right.
And that's the way the government would like it to be, because it gives them control over you.
Right, exactly. And so...
You're not independent. You do not have liberty.
Right, you do not have liberty.
You're free to do whatever you want, but you do not have liberty because you're actually a slave to your job.
Yeah.
You have to move to the opposite side of the U.S. to work the new position, because otherwise, what are you going to do?
Right.
You won't have money.
Right, exactly. So that is me having my horizons broadened and coming over more towards Jason's position because I experienced a story. And so really phenomenal, transcendent ideas can be packaged in a way that's entertaining, so it holds your attention, and also it's subtle, so you don't even have to actually logically work out what the idea means or what it implies, how it works. It just gets embedded in your psyche in a sort of hypnotic, subtle, subversive way. And so if you're engaged in good stories, those good ideas will be embedded in you, and they will broaden the way that you think. They'll broaden the problems that you are capable of considering. They'll broaden the ways that you are capable of engaging the problems that you currently have to deal with. New solutions to new solutions to old problems. The one thing I would think about is Lord of the Rings. I read Lord of the Rings recently, and I was in a real hectic place, and the idea that I got from Lord of the Rings is that if you just don't give up, you just keep taking the next step. You're like Frodo. You just keep walking.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, God will provide for you. Like as long as you handle the next step day by day, do what you got to do moment to moment, just don't give in to despair. Do not lose faith in God's mission and his plan. If you just don't give in, then things will work out for the greater good. Maybe you won't.
I was going to say, that doesn't mean that you will be more comfortable.
Right. That's not what I'm saying. But it will mean that you will be more fulfilled, because you will be able to die or pass on to God's, spiritual plane, whatever.
This goes back to what we were talking about with the soldiers. If you're a foot soldier in Christ's army, it's the the war is not about you making it through the war.
Right.
Intact.
Right. It's about the good side winning.
Yes.
That's what it's about.
Right.
And you get to die
sometimes
knowing
you die in the process of
ultimate
victory.
Yeah, ultimate victory. But you die knowing
your side won, though.
My side won, and I helped contribute to it.
And it's the only war that we know the outcome of.
Right.
Before we die.
Yeah, before we die. We know ultimately that we're going to win. And we get to know I did my part in however hard it was or however little I may perceive my part as being. I got to die. I died fulfilled. I died knowing that I was a good and faithful servant. And that is, I personally think that is more valuable than any Porsche. The peace and the fulfillment that comes from that is the thing that I pursue. And it's a big part of why I do this, like why I come every Saturday to do this with you.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't, I would feel like I'm being pulled apart with anxiety and dread of like feeling like I'm not doing what I ought to be doing. Like I have to do this. So, that is an idea that came from me reading stories, and it was an idea that I needed to hear. I needed to have when I got, the low battery, we just got the warning, so it distracted me, but it expanded the way I viewed my world such that I was able to continue being productive, get a big promotion at work, make more money for my family, get us closer to our goals. And our goals, I believe, are in line with God's plan. So by achieving my goals, I'm furthering God's plan. So this is it all rolls in. It's all a feedback loop. It all provides this sort of positive forward motion in your life when you're engaging with good stories, when you're opening your mind to the possibilities that God has for you. So broadening your horizon through engaging with literature, through engaging with good stories, I think it's paramount. I think it's incredibly important that you do that. And the flip side, I'll say this one last thing and I'll turn it over to Jason, then we'll call it. The flip side of that is that if you're engaging with crap, bad stories, watching horror movies, daytime television, Netflix, reading romance novels, like reading pure entertainment books, like all the time, you can read them, books just for entertainment, fine, whatever, read them every once in a while, but don't read them all the time. Throw in Lord of the Rings, throw in
it's popcorn. There's no nutrients there.
Right, exactly. And I love
fun
popcorn.
And it's gone.
Yeah, it's fun and it's gone. So the flip side is that if you engage with rootless stuff all the time, rootless stories, you'll become a rootless person. Your mind will be opened in the wrong direction. All the doors that you don't want open will be open. All the doors you want open will be closed.
Right.
So you got to curate what you're bringing in very, very carefully. That's my shtick. That's my spiel.
Yeah. You are what you eat.
Yes.
What you eat literally becomes part of you.
Yeah.
And what you allow into your mind literally it shapes your mind.
Right. Absolutely.
And it will change you. So we're going to call it there. Be careful about what you take in. We love you. We're praying for you. Go to church. Find a wife. Raise children if you can. Be faithful to God. And live your mission. You are the main character in your story. You are the main character. Slay your dragons. Get the girl, boys.
Yes, all right, guys.
Sir.
Sorry about the short episode. We hope the long episode last week makes up for it.
Or you're welcome.
Yeah, or you're welcome.
Finally, something I can listen to in one sitting.
Yeah. All right, guys. We'll see you.